Welcome to the Health Channel, all health, all the time. I'm Kathy Buccio, coming to you from the Baptist Health South Florida studios. Breast augmentation, aka boob job, is the most popular cosmetic surgical procedure with over 300,000 performed in 2017 alone. But the breast implants used are not lifetime devices. The longer you have them, the more likely it is that complications will occur, and you will need to have them removed. The question we are tackling on our Staying Healthy show is, are your implants making you sick? And joining us to share her experience with breast implants is Jen Herrera, a news anchor and TV host with NBC's Six in the Mix. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you, Kathy, for having me.
I love having you here, and I'm so excited to share your story because it's not something that's maybe spoken about a lot, and I'm glad you're going to share that with us. And before we dive into the experience with breast implants, I want you to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Like you said, I'm a television host and anchor. I've been doing this for nearly 20 years down here in South Florida. Part of what I love to do is really connecting with the community, and sharing this story is one aspect of that. I'm also a mom of two girls, so that played a big role in this too. My daughters are 11 and 9 years old, and my husband's a Miami-Dade firefighter. So we're super tied to this community. And again, we have the voices, and so I think it's important that we choose to use our voices in the right way.
Absolutely, yes. And you have a great book that is out as well, and we're going to talk more about it a little later in the show. But with the pressures of being on TV, do you feel that it just keeps getting more and more as we go through time? I feel like there's just so much of that spotlight.
There is, and Kathy, you know, because you do this too, there are a lot of pressures when it comes to just being a woman, period, let alone a woman who is on television. And so I think early on in my career, it was interesting. I didn't necessarily feel those pressures, or I didn't realize I was feeling those pressures.
Right.
As far as plastic surgery, this was something that I actually chose to do as an 18-year-old, which boggles my mind now, especially as a mother, the fact that I chose to go under the knife, and I was allowed to go under the knife at 18 years old. But there are pressures when it comes to being on television. Now there's a whole other aspect of it, because it's not just being on television.
It's social media.
It's social media. Kathy, we look at Instagram and we look at all these pictures, and sometimes even when we know better, we forget how filtered they are.
Absolutely.
But there's always a filter, and similar to plastic surgery, just because you're seeing something, it doesn't mean it's real.
Absolutely, and it's true. And in our business, we're going on social media constantly, looking at pictures, scrolling, and that scrolling can be a little damaging.
It can be damaging. You're comparing yourself to other people. Luckily, I'm in a place now where that doesn't happen as often because of the experience that I've been through. You know, my daughter, for instance, an 11-year-old, she's keeps asking me for Instagram and Snapchat, and my answer has been no, because I think that what that puts in their heads, what they're supposed to look like, what they're supposed to be doing. You know, luckily kids her age, there's an innocence to it where they're just posing with little Starbucks cups, but at what point does it turn into, my lips aren't large enough, my butt's not big enough, my chest isn't large enough, and that's what's so scary.
And why don't I look like my favorite Disney actress? Or
yes, great point, great point.
Now, you wrote the book, and Are Your Fake Boobs Making You Sick? Why I Went Back to a B Cup. So when was it time for you when you said, you know what, I want to put this in a book, I want to share my story?
I knew when I had decided to explant, I knew that this was a story that I felt needed to be shared. I made that decision. I started jotting notes down, but I wasn't in a place comfortable enough to put it out there yet.
Why?
I think I wanted to have the whole experience to myself and then get ready to sit down at a keyboard and start to share it. I remember telling my plastic surgeon, this is something that I want to share, whether it's via a blog or in a book one day. I'll let you know because I want to interview you. I'm not ready yet. It's a very personal choice. As women, what our looks tend to define us, whether that's right or wrong. The whole TV question, especially being down here in South Florida, Miami is its own animal. South Florida is its own animal. What women on TV look like in South Florida versus other places.
It's different if you turn on any channel, whether it's English or Spanish-speaking television.
There's a difference. And so I had to make sure that I was ready to tell my story without bias. I wanted it to be real. Maybe I was going to do this procedure and not feel better. I didn't know what it was going to hold for me in the end. So it was a matter of me kind of getting myself together. And then about 6 months after I removed my implant is when I sat down and I started writing, and I just couldn't stop telling the story.
Now, were you diagnosed with a medical condition because of the implants?
There are very few doctors who will tell you that you are diagnosed with something because of your breast implants. Now, just recent research has come out that a certain type of implant has been linked to a certain type of cancer.
Yes.
I'm no expert. I'm not a doctor. I've never claimed to be. However, I was diagnosed with a very rare, very serious autoimmune disease in 2013. There were months and months and months of testing, and finally I was given a diagnosis where all my symptoms did not match up to that diagnosis. Some, however, did, and so that's the label that I was given. And so many thousands of other women are getting diagnosed with very similar autoimmune diseases who also have breast implants.
So you talk about months of testing. What kind of tests were you undergoing? Was it more to sort of pinpoint what was going on, or because they couldn't figure it out?
They couldn't figure it out. So I know we're going to talk about the symptoms in a little bit. I had a wide variety of symptoms. I had rashes, I had joint pain, I had I was tired all the time. So there were a lot of different tests being done. I mean, I had a colonoscopy, I had a PET scan, I had a mammogram. I had certain tests that you're not supposed to have until much later on in life. But at that point, they were trying to rule out all sorts of things. And you know, when you're a busy mom, you tend to like put things off and
because you don't think I don't need this right now.
I'm okay. You know, in full disclosure, I'm not proud of it. My rashes were so bad and on my face, and I just was
so on your face as well.
They were on my. It was on my face. It was on my elbows. It was the tops of my thighs. My hands were definitely the worst. My hands were so red they were almost purple. There were lesions on them. I thought, you know, again, we put things off sometimes, which I'll never do again. You know, I thought maybe it was the rubber gloves that I used to do the dishes. Or the chalk that I used at the time.
Anything but your implants.
Kathy, it took me years to go there. For me to finally realize, let alone a doctor never leaned that way. And I don't blame them because it's not necessarily out there or wasn't out there at the time, but things are slowly starting to change.
So at what point did you say, could this be tied to my implants?
So that I was diagnosed in 2013. From 2013 till about 2016, I really buckled down on my diet, on my lifestyle. I stopped working for a little bit. I really took the time for me to figure out myself on so many different levels. At that point, my joints were still, I was in severe pain. I couldn't bend down to get anything without, at the risk of too much information, you know, us ladies, just to sit down to use the restroom, I had to brace myself on a wall. I was in my early 30s at this point. I remember playing sidewalk chalk and hopscotch with my kids, and it was a whole entire motion to be able to.
It was so much work.
It was so much pain. It was so much pain. To get onto my bed and to put my hand down, I would have to make a fist because my wrist wouldn't bend all the way. And so at that point, believe it or not, my health had improved so much through diet and exercise and lifestyle, but I still knew that there was something very, very wrong. And I started doing a little research because my implants at that point were 18 years old. And so it was, okay, am I going to get another set of implants or am I going to remove these? I also started feeling a lot of lumps, and then because when your implants are old, you know, that tends to happen. So my husband and I were talking about it. I started researching the possibility of removing them, and that's when I discovered breast implant illness.
I'm mind blown right now. I really am.
That's how I was, trust me.
Wow. Okay, so we have a clip with you holding some sort of jar opener.
Oh yeah,
so tell us the story behind and needing this device. What is this?
Okay, so one of my worst symptoms, I said my hands. So I actually made this video just a short time ago because it still surprises me, Kathy, when I'm actually able to open things. I could not open salsa jars, spaghetti jars.
Because the movement, and it was so painful.
It was so, I couldn't make a fist.
Oh my goodness.
I can make a fist now. For years, I was not able to make a fist. It was literally like this. I would wake up in the morning like this.
It almost like arthritis. I had like an
That's exactly what it was. I was tested for rheumatoid arthritis more than one time because every single symptom I had was of arthritis. However, every single test always came back clear.
Oh my goodness. Okay, did you consider maybe going through more testing at that point once you found out it could be the implants that you say, let me bring this to my doctor, maybe we can do some more tests?
Okay. No, at that point, I'll be 100% honest, I had every single test done.
You said no more tests,
I was just kind of like, listen. And I discovered, Kathy, through that process, the power of food and the power of the right foods and good foods and supplements and rest and really listening to your body. So for me, the fact that I got better results after a very scary diagnosis, going off of my medications and just treating and healing myself through foods, I knew that I didn't necessarily need to go to a doctor at that point. For me, again, everybody's different and everyone has to do what they feel comfortable with. But for me, that was a decision that I was comfortable with. About the same time, the nutritionist and dietitian who I relied so heavily on as I went through this process, she started talking to me. She randomly sent me a text and said, hey, I've been doing a little research on breast implants and their effects on the immune system.
And this is after you...
This is after my husband and I had already been having these conversations. And so, I mean, I have chills, like just telling this story. And so she said, this is a doctor who I have found. He's in South Florida.
Okay.
Around the same time, my very best friend in the whole wide world who had her implants and similar symptoms, some of the same symptoms, were a little bit different. She said, Jen, I found this plastic surgeon. He specializes... Same one. So I'm a big believer in the universe, and when it's trying to tell you something, you have to at least pay attention and dig a little bit farther.
Okay, and now I want to ask you, when you were seeing all these doctors and then finally when you realized, okay, this could be my implants, you go to this plastic surgeon, was there a doctor who tried to help you more than the rest? Someone who was more, not, I would say on your side, but saying, you know what, this could be an issue.
The doctor I chose, I would say, was on my side 100%. Now, and I'm always very clear about this, he never said, your breast implants are making you sick. He never said that. And I think that's important because, and I understand so many women want to hear that. They want to hear that all of these crazy, strange, horrible, debilitating symptoms
could have a cause.
And that's it, and they're going to know that that's it before they take them out.
Right.
Because it's so personal. It's your breast. It's part of what makes you a woman. He never said that. He said that he sees patients every single day who come in, and a lot of them do feel better after they explant. However, there's a couple now and then who don't necessarily feel better. So it's a very personal choice. You have to be confident. I knew when I left that day, based on him, based on the office, just the conversation, I knew it was the right choice for me. And Kathy, I was at the point then that it was like, okay, I've tried everything else. I have to try this.
Yes. What do you have to lose?
I needed
everything to gain, really.
I was in my early 30s and I couldn't move. And all I kept thinking is, my kids are so young. I have to be able to do activities with them. I want to be able to travel with my husband one day. And the way that I was going with the elbows and the knees, I wasn't going to be able to do much. So I was like, you know what? Even if it doesn't work, hey, at least I can say that I officially, truly tried everything.
What a story. Now, coming up, Jen continues to share her journey of breast implants to explants. So stay tuned. You're watching the Health Channel, all health, all the time on South Florida PBS. If you have a question for Jen, please call in using the toll-free number 855-796-4475 and visit our website allhealthtv.com, where you can watch a live stream of the Health Channel and watch videos from previous shows. We'd love to hear from you. Now, when you were writing your book, did you ever question why no one was talking about the possibilities that maybe their implants were making them sick?
It was a very small community, I feel like, at the time. You couldn't find a whole lot, and it's amazing just in the past 6 months to a year how much this has grown. But I knew with this topic it was going to be a very tricky one, and it was going to be a very sensitive one, which is why I always make sure to let everybody know this is my story.
Right.
It doesn't apply to everybody else. I'm going to tell my story in hopes, listen, if I help one woman figure out what's wrong with her, if there's a teenager who's considering plastic surgery and she reads this book and she rethinks it, that's my only concern. You know, let's help one or two people. But Kathy, just in the past, like I said, 6 months to a year, it's amazing the voice that this cause has really, it's risen.
It's giving them security to come out and say something and say, that's how I was feeling.
Exactly. I mean, there are women, they are better at it than I am. They're posting pictures of their actual implants. And, you know, like I said earlier, I had to take that time for myself to kind of figure it out. And they are just bold and brazen, and they're sharing their message. And it's a beautiful thing. And then the fact that they have this entire community behind them, which is scary and risky, especially when the medical field, as wonderful as the medical field is not there yet with breast implant illness.
And you said you had yours done at 18.
I did.
And this is a reality that I think a lot of parents face, is teenagers want a boob job.
Right.
That's what they want. They're asking for it. But your parents approved.
They did.
Did both of them approve?
They did. My parents approved, which is crazy because
now you think about it as a parent, you said.
I'd be like, oh, are you kidding me? What?
Like, Mom, what did you do?
No, and my parents were strict parents when I was a teenager. And the other thing that I think about now as an adult, they were in no financial position by any means to be able to pay $5,000, you know, I think it was at the time, for plastic surgery for their 18-year-old daughter. I'll admit I was a very persuasive teenager.
Right.
They
obviously got the money somewhere.
I was just like, Mom, no, I'm insecure. My breasts were uneven. uneven, which is actually normal, ladies, to have uneven breasts.
Right.
But when you're a teenager, it's like the end of the world, and I wanted my shirts to look a certain way. So I used that. I also knew that I wanted to be on television.
Right.
And I grew up in South Florida. I knew what worked and what didn't work. And I think a lot of young girls turn to plastic surgery because they're insecure about their bodies. I would not say I was insecure about my body. I'm a perfectionist by nature, and so I wanted what I thought
was the perfect body for TV.
Was to be perfect. Wow. And unfortunately, it cost me my health for a very long time.
Were you scared or just excited to get these implants?
I was excited. Yeah, I was 18.
You're not even thinking about risks at 18.
I was thinking about not having to wear a bra with tube tops. I mean, that's what, and I will be. I mean, that's it. That's where my mind was. No, I was so excited. I was going to get evened out, and I did it spring break, my freshman year of college, and I will be the first to tell you, I loved my fake boobs. Like, I will never tell anybody, "Ooh, why would you get breast implants? That's ridiculous."
Right.
I get it. I love.
It's not about not loving them. It's just they're making you sick.
Exactly. I always say I loved my fake boobs. My fake boobs didn't love me.
Didn't love you back.
They just didn't show me much love forever.
Right. But did the doctor help you decide what kind of implants you were gonna get? Or
to be honest, I mean, I don't remember. I know that I had saline implants, which is interesting to point out because a lot of people are under the assumption that only silicone or the gummies or the textured implants can make you sick. My implants were saline implants. I didn't have huge implants, obviously. They were still intact once they were removed. I remember, holding them up in the office and just remembering, making sure not to go too big. I talk about it in my book that I remember my mom asking the doctor, will Jennifer be able to breastfeed? Right. And I remember thinking, how bizarre of a question is that?
Right.
Like, I'm 18 years old. Why are you
You're
asking?
probably like, Mom, ew.
Yeah, like, why are you asking that question? Of course, now as a mother who has breastfed 2 children, I completely understand why she asked that question. So yeah, I mean, there's little moments from that meeting, but at 18 years old, and I will tell you 100%, I wasn't reading the warning signs or the risks. I was concerned with what I was going to look like.
You were just thinking about not wearing a bra.
That's it. I mean, as shallow as it sounds, and now as a 30-something-year-old woman, I'm just like, oh my gosh, but that's the reality of it. And I think when you're teenagers, or when a teenager is thinking about getting plastic surgery, you got to dig a little deeper and
as to
really
why you are getting this surgery.
Yeah, and what is it going to mean or do long term?
Right. Now, it's very important to have a qualified and licensed plastic surgeon perform the procedure. And we have a short clip from plastic surgeon Dr. Xiaoti Xu, who goes over some of the red flags we should watch out for when looking for a plastic surgeon. Let's take a look.
You, first of all, want your surgeon to be well-trained in plastic surgery. So you want to look for ASPS logo, which is the Association of Plastic Surgery logo. And if you want to ensure that they're certified by the American Board of Plastic Surgery, you can go to abps.org to look at, there's a search option for you to see if they're board certified. It actually takes quite a long time for a person to be certified in plastic surgery.
Okay.
So I've been finishing my training about 1.5 years now, and I'm still not board certified. I'm what's called board eligible, meaning that I've done 8 years of training in plastic surgery. I practiced as a plastic surgeon for a full year, but I'm still in the process of my testing to become board certified. So it's that rigorous a process for someone to be a full-blown plastic surgeon. If you see someone's website, they say cosmetic surgeon or aesthetic surgeon or things like that, those are things that kind of looks like a red flag unless they have something else to back it with.
I have a few questions that I want to read out loud that women should ask themselves before going through with breast augmentation. So these are some of the questions that women should ask. So how much does my current situation bother me? You were talking about asking the right questions. So something like that, would you ask something like that as well?
If I was going in for a procedure?
If you're really thinking about getting a procedure, what are the reasons you're doing it? I mean, is your current situation,
Oh, I think so. I think that's probably, absolutely. The number one question, why do you want to do something like this? Why do you want to alter your appearance? What's your motive in the end?
Absolutely. Now, how excited am I to go through with this, right?
Oh gosh, when I was 18 and I found out I was getting a boob job, I was like, heck yeah, bring them on. But it'd be different now, obviously, with my experience, but I imagine that enthusiasm should be at the same level.
But at the same time, a question like, how much am I willing to expose myself to certain risks should be a question every woman should be asking her doctor?
It should be a question. And I know at 18 years old, you're considered a woman, but I love that you just said every woman, because I think women specifically are getting things done so early.
Right.
And you don't know the long-term effects. You don't know where your life is going to take you. So yeah, that's an important one too.
Are there any other questions that you would add?
I mean, it's hard to answer that, to be honest, because I would not go in for a procedure. But I want to be clear, I don't judge people. I understand why, especially with insecurities that women tend to have.
But maybe let's word it this way. When you were 18 years old, what questions do you wish you would have asked?
I wish I had been smart enough to read the entire warning thing that they gave out, but in full disclosure, I probably would not have cared.
You would have done it anyway.
I can admit that I would have done it anyway. I would have thought, hey, this is okay. So many women are doing it. It's got to be okay.
And you made a really great point before. You said so much of our femininity and womanhood is tied to our breasts.
Yeah.
So after you had this surgery, did you feel less feminine? Did you feel more feminine, more empowered?
I felt more feminine. I felt more empowered. The second I woke up from anesthesia, I knew that that was the right choice for me. I have scars. I'm all banged up. It's not an easy choice. I'm reminded every single day, not only what I did to feel better, but what happened and the choice that I made. And I always want to be very clear about this too. I don't blame the doctor who I got my initial procedure with at all. I mean, he was wonderful. He was amazing. I have nothing bad to say. It was a choice that I made. In the end, it affected me a certain way. It does not, breast implants do not affect all women the same way.
Right.
I was affected in a certain way. But with that moment of waking up and eventually seeing myself in the mirror, I was like, oh, this is kind of cute. You know, it's a different look.
It's a very different look, but it's something that you feel good with.
I feel natural, Kathy.
Yes.
I feel like me. I feel like this is how I'm supposed to look. And it's funny because I spent all those years with implants and going into surgery to get evened out. And as soon as those implants came out, back to being uneven. But you know what?
But happy.
Hey, it's how God made me.
Absolutely. There is a type of cancer that is exclusive to breast implants referred to as BIA-ALCL, breast implant associated anaplastic large cell lymphoma. The Food and Drug Administration announced that women who have breast implants may have a very small but increased risk of developing this rare cancer in the scar tissue surrounding the implants. Let's take a look.
If you or someone you know has breast implants, or if you're thinking about getting them, you may have heard of anaplastic large cell lymphoma, or ALCL. FDA recently announced that women who have breast implants may have a very small but increased risk of developing ALCL in the scar tissue surrounding the implant. Like other lymphomas, ALCL is a cancer of the immune system. It's not a cancer of the breast tissue. FDA is aware of about 60 reports of ALCL worldwide in women with breast implants, which is a very small number compared to the estimated 5 to 10 million women who have breast implants. In most cases, these women went to their healthcare providers after noticing changes in the look or feel of the area around their implants. Changes like swelling, pain, lumps, or asymmetry, where one breast becomes different in size or shape than the other. These changes usually occurred years after first getting the implants. When these women were diagnosed with ALCL, most of them were treated by removing their implants and the surrounding scar tissue. Some of these women also received chemotherapy or radiation therapy or both. Some researchers think that ALCL in women with breast implants may be less aggressive than the more common form of the disease, but at this time there isn't enough information to say for sure. Because there are so few cases of ALCL in women with breast implants, we also can't confirm that breast implants cause ALCL or know if certain kinds of implants increase the risk more than others. FDA is gathering additional data so we can learn more about ALCL in women with breast implants. So, if you have breast implants, what should you do? If you don't have symptoms, FDA does not recommend getting your implants removed only because you're concerned about developing ALCL. Just continue your routine medical care, including your regular breast screening evaluations. If you do notice changes in the area around your implant, have it evaluated by your healthcare provider.
Now, this video is a little old, and new research has actually come out saying that there are now over 450 cases in the United States. Now, were you concerned that you had Anaplastic large lymphoma?
I wasn't. Fortunately, I did not have a textured implant.
Okay.
And this research wasn't out. It wasn't out until after I had explanted. So no, that was, fortunately, that was not my concern. And I know that the numbers are very low on this right now, and that is worth pointing out. However, it shouldn't discredit it that it's being linked to a type of cancer.
Yes.
And sadly, what breaks my heart, Kathy, is that so many women who are breast cancer survivors have these types of implants, and it just, the thought that somebody could possibly have to go through this twice,
all over again.
I mean, there are no words. There are no words.
Now we have another clip with plastic surgeon Dr. Xiaoti Xu, who goes over the different types of breast implants. So let's watch.
The teardrop implant was really in favor because it mimics a natural breast shape. But the problem is when you have a teardrop implant, you have to make sure it stays in place. So all the teardrop implants have what's called texturing. So if you can look at the surface of this, it's very rough compared to an implant which is round and smooth. And the rough surface makes your body form a layer of scar tissue that's not very noticeable, but keeps it in place, because the last thing you want is for your implant to rotate.
No.
But because of ALCL, what they found is the majority of cases of ALCL are associated with textured implants.
Which is a teardrop.
Exactly. So, and again, this is sort of depends on the surgeon and their preference. But in my personal practice, I feel like because of, even though the risk of ALCL is about 1 in 3,000 to 1 in 30,000, there's no clear link between implants and ALCL, but I'd rather just go with something that has significantly less risk.
Okay, so Dr. Xu just broke down the different types of implants there are, and you said you actually had saline.
I had saline implants, which a lot of people are shocked to hear that I had such a reaction with saline implants, because saline implants are supposed to be considered the safe implant, and they are for so many women.
Right.
But I do attribute a lot of my symptoms to my implants. And it's also worth pointing out that saline implants, even though they're saline, they have a silicone shell. And so you may have a reaction over time, or some people have one immediately to that silicone shell.
So Jen, for you, when did you first having some symptoms or medical problems that from there kind of started snowballing?
Yeah, it's wild, because when I talk about my symptoms, on social media, or I email with other women, they're like, oh my gosh, I have the same exact thing. So it was about probably the end of 2012, give or take a few months, and my hands, the redness that we had talked about, the pain in my hands, my arms from my elbow to my fingertips would be so numb in the middle of the night that it was like a throbbing numbness. And I don't know if that makes sense to anyone who has never experienced it, but it's when your extremities are so numb they hurt. So I was experiencing that. And again, the redness across my face, which they thought was lupus, my elbows, and other parts of my body. So those were the first symptoms that started to pop up.
And I have to share this with our viewers, because off camera you were even saying that to knock on a door was so painful for you, to shake a hand.
Yes.
Why? How? Why?
My knuckles, every single joint in my body. So think about that: your knuckles, your elbows, your knees, your toes. I mean, I get out of the bed and I was walking like a very old lady. They were so sensitive to the touch. And I was a reporter at the time, a street reporter. And so I would knock on doors, the bad guy's door. You always see that shot of the reporter knocking on the door.
That was you.
And I write about this. I remember hoping that whatever photographer I was working with would capture the knock on the first try, because just knocking was excruciating. I probably sound like a wimp right now, but I'm telling you, I'm not a wimp. It was painful. I'd meet people on stories. I'd meet people at work, and my dad always taught me a firm handshake is everything. So I would go in and I would literally cringe. When I would go to shake someone's hand. My kids, you give your kids high fives. My kids play sports, and if they went too hard, they could see my reaction, and they would apologize. And it's wild, because even now, over a year later, they still, if something happens, they'll say, "Oh, mommy, I'm so sorry," and I'm like, "Honey, it's okay." Or if I'm making dinner and I'm opening something,
they're like, "Do you need help?"
My oldest daughter will say, "Can I open that?" And then they used to kind of compete, because they each wanted to help me, so that they would compete. No, I want to open it. No, I want to open it. Where now, I can open things again. So
the simple things that you weren't able to do.
It's wild. I enjoyed lifting weights. I enjoyed running. I enjoyed doing a lot of physical activities. And there was a time there where I really had to scale it back, because my body was not allowing me to do certain things. It just wasn't happening.
And I want to bring up your family because I think this is a really big part of it as well. What were I know you have two little girls, and your husband, what were they thinking and watching you as you got out of that bed and you looked like an old lady, or mom can't do sidewalk chalk, or my running partner can't go out with me?
Right. You know, my husband was huge through this whole entire process, and I give him so much credit with getting me through it, because we were like, what is going on? Like, why is this happening, and how? And I talk about this in my book, and maybe I'm a little old school, and that's okay, I'll accept that. But when you make a decision like this to remove your breast implants, you have to consult with your spouse. Oh, who cares? It's your body. Okay, right. However, your husband married you a certain way, yes, in sickness and in health, but you need to have the conversation. And thank God, I am so grateful that my husband saw me struggling for so many years, tried to help me figure it out for so many years. He was like, go, do it, take it out, take him out. Get rid of him. I don't care. He's more of a butt guy anyway. So it kind of worked out.
He might be asking for butt implants.
Right. But that it's a conversation that I think you have to have, and you have to have it not only for your spouse but for yourself, because you want to feel confident that you're still going to be able to feel sexy and you're still going to be able to feel like a woman. As far as my daughters, certain things they realized, but it wasn't until after I explanted that they realized how much I couldn't do before.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like the high five in the jars. But then once I explanted and almost immediately started to feel better, they were like, oh my gosh.
Like you're playing with us.
Like,
or,
wow, like
yes.
this is okay. You can do this. Your hands aren't red. I used to always tuck my hands under my legs in the car because the sun would just exasperate my symptoms. So there's like little things that they notice now that I didn't, even acknowledge at the time.
And when you talk to them about it, how did you describe it to them? How did you explain it to them?
Yeah, that was tough. I mean, my girls are 9 and 11, so I think, if my math is right, they were like 8 and 9 at the time. I was very honest with them. I don't know, some may say too honest, but I was very upfront with them. I explained that when I was a young woman, I was not happy with my chest and that my breasts were uneven, and so I decided to get them fixed. I compared it to balloons, just to kind of get it on their level. I said it's kind of like putting balloons in your chest. I said, and so I had big boobs for a really long time, and then I realized that they were probably making me not feel good, and so then I decided to take them out. And I hope that they remember this as they get older and, put the priority on health versus what you look like on the outside.
Absolutely. Now, after writing your book, did you hear from a lot of women whose breast implants were diagnosed with autoimmune diseases?
Yes, it is wild. I mean, you go on Instagram and you just put hashtag BII, there's this entire community. And, I talk about my symptoms, and I'm sure so many people are like, what are you talking about?
Right.
There are women who email me and message me on a regular basis going, oh my gosh.
It's surreal.
This is exactly what I'm feeling. Or some women have it a lot worse than I had it. It is wild. And women are so grateful that they're finally understanding what's going on. And, when I was first undergoing testing with an amazing dermatologist who I was working with, and the Sjogren's came up, lupus came up. I was ultimately diagnosed with dermatomyositis, rheumatoid arthritis came up. There were all these Lyme disease. There were all of these autoimmune disorders that were being brought up. And when I speak to all of these women, they've been told the same exact things. I went on a very serious medication for 1 year because I was scared. I was like, okay, I have to take this, or I'm in my mind I was going to die sooner than I was supposed to.
Right.
And so you have a lot of other women doing the same thing. And then once I went off my meds with food and diet and nutrition, and then ultimately removing my breast implants,
it's night and day.
It's night and day.
If you feel comfortable, are you able to share some stories of women that reached out to you and were like, Jen, I can't believe you're sharing this story right now. This is what happened to me.
Yeah, all women handle things differently. We all do things differently. Some women are much more vocal about it, and they'll send me like these long, lengthy emails, just so appreciative. I have one friend in particular who, she was very private, and I respect her for that. And so she would just simply text me like, 3-word questions about like, did you have this? Did you have this? And I would just simply answer, yeah, I have like goosebumps.
Without pushing.
And I would just give her all the information that she needed. And then, she would text me the date of her surgery. And then I would just text her, how you doing? And then, since then, I'm so proud of her because she has gone public with her explant. And she said that she just knew that she had to help other women based on what she went through.
I mean, it must be a great feeling to know that you sort of gave her that little push to not only have the surgery, but share her story.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, early on, my goal was just to help one person or one teenage girl make a better decision or to reflect on, hey, this could be going on with me. One person, the fact that I've ended up helping so many more than that, it's very rewarding, and then that their voices are now being heard. So it's just kind of this trickle down effect.
I love it, the pay it forward effect.
Exactly,
I like it.
exactly. I always say I'm a storyteller by profession. I've been telling other people's stories for 20 years as a journalist, and so it's in my nature to research things and explore things, but to be able to tell my story yet still help so many other women has truly been an amazing experience.
And Jen, let me ask you, when you got diagnosed and you're going through all these tests and medicines and seeing if, could it be this or could it be that, did you ever try holistic approach, like natural medicine?
Right. So I went on a serious medication for a year. And then my husband and I looked at each other and we said, okay, we can't do this. Through the process, I had started working with a holistic dietitian, nutritionist, and so my diet had changed up until that point.
Okay.
Once I went off the medication, which can make you go blind, so it was a very serious one that I had to have my eyes tested for. I mean, it was, you name it, I had the test done. That's when I got pretty intense with a heavy metals detox. I did a food sensitivity testing. I did a lot of acupuncture. I still go to the chiropractor regularly. So I think all those little things helped me get to about probably 75 or 85% better compared to where I was. My skin cleared up. I didn't have the welts and the redness, but that joint pain was still there. So just through holistic, treatments and good foods, I got not more than halfway there, but it was the implants.
And all this was going on when you took that break for yourself or while you were working?
No, I was diagnosed when I was working. And I was working full time and waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning at the time. And I remember I was told by a supervisor that I looked tired. And they had no idea of the fight that I was fighting.
So you didn't share this at all with anyone at work?
I didn't share it until right before I left.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Now coming up, we focused on life without breast implants. I'm Kathy Buccio, and we're talking about removing breast implants for health reasons with Jen Herrera, a news anchor and TV host with NBC6 in the mix. Now, Jen, before we talk about life after your breast removal surgery, or as you call it, an explant, I want to watch a clip of you talking about exercising and remembering the problems your implants cause.
I did push-ups today during a circuit here at the house, and it reminded me how far I have come. If you have weird symptoms going on, then chances are you may know exactly what I'm talking about. I couldn't do push-ups for a really long time because my wrists just hurt so bad. And then also, I don't know if you can hear this, but it's my rings kind of clinking back and forth. This is my original engagement ring and wedding band, and for a really long time I couldn't wear it because my fingers were so swollen that when I finally got them off one day, it hurt so badly just to get them off that I couldn't get them back on. And now it's wild to me that they literally move up and down my finger. If you're watching this video and you have no idea why this is a big deal, then you've never had inflammation and you've never had swollen joints or joint pain, and hey, that's awesome. That wasn't the case for me. I actually went a long time not wearing these rings, and I wore a different ring, and it always kind of upset me because, I wanted that original engagement ring and wedding band. I'm about 8 months out from explanting, and some of my joint stuff did improve before I went, to the great lengths I did as far as removing my breast implants. Some of that I was able to control through food and some other stuff that we have talked about, stress levels and different exercise. But I like to call it the final piece to my puzzle was removing my breast implants, and I believe removing so many toxins that did come with them that were affecting my body. And I always like to point this out. I don't think implants necessarily affect everybody's body, but I do think that they affect some people, and I think that the longer you have them in, the greater the effects can be. So loose rings, got to do push-ups, just a couple of things that I find to be a very, very big deal throughout this whole journey.
So that visual with the ring,
I know.
That was a big moment for you.
I actually forgot that I had posted that video until I just saw it. It still is a big moment. Because I couldn't get them off for so long.
Was that swollen?
It was that intense. So it was swollen, and then having to pull them past my knuckles because my knuckles were so sensitive. And then my 10-year band that I say I deserved because I put up with my husband for 10 years. I wear that now, and it's so loose that it makes me nervous because we had to actually end up sending it back to get a larger size and now it falls off my hand.
That's incredible.
It's nuts.
Okay, so Do you use the same surgeon or a different surgeon for your explants than you do with your implants?
So I used a different plastic surgeon, and I want to be adamant about this, not because I was unhappy with my original plastic surgeon at all. I have nothing bad to say about him. I decided to choose Dr. David Rankin for my explant because he specializes in explants. So he's the person who my husband and I kind of found through research and with our dietitian nutritionist, and had come very recommended, and so that's why I chose to go with him.
Do you recommend that? Do you recommend maybe going to a surgeon that specializes in explants?
You know, through all of the women who I have met through this entire process, unfortunately, there are a lot of them who have gone to their plastic surgeons and said that they're, being affected this way, and some of their plastic surgeons have tried to talk them out of explanting. For one reason or another,
Right.
I'm not sure. So what I would say is find someone who is going to listen to your concerns, not make promises necessarily, because everyone's body's different, everyone's
Right.
body's going to react different, but at least find someone who acknowledges that there are women who are struggling, and these women are struggling in all the same ways, and these women all have breast implants, and then make your decision that way.
When did you have the explant surgery?
I had the explant surgery in November 2017.
Okay. And the video we saw was 8 months after you were doing push-ups, you were back to exercising, which you could not do.
I couldn't do, not the way that I like to do,
Right.
Not as intense. It's like,
Very modified.
Right, who gets excited about push-ups? You know what I mean?
Only you, I think.
It's just like, but it was just the fact that I could put my hands straight. My mom's amazing. She's a retired principal in Broward County, and now she's a yoga instructor. And when I was really struggling to try and get some sort of exercise in, she's like, Jen, let's do yoga. She didn't realize, my own mother,
Right.
didn't realize how bad of shape I was in until we started doing private yoga lessons, because my elbows and they
Wouldn't even extend.
Wouldn't extend all the way. I couldn't do downward dog. I couldn't hold because my arm strength and my wrists were so frail at the time. So it's kind of goofy. Like, why is she excited about push-ups? But when your mobility has been limited for so long, at a fairly young age, just to be able to do something like that, it is a big deal.
And obviously it's been a couple years now since the surgery, and you feel great?
I feel amazing, Kathy, and I don't take it for granted at all. Every single day, I'm thankful for how I feel now.
Now, I want to put on the screen an Instagram message from one of your followers who says, I just finished the book. I admire your honesty in discussing your journey. In the end of your book, you talk about feeling guilty for telling your story because of women battling breast cancer. Do not feel guilty for sharing your story. And this is coming from a breast cancer survivor. That's beautiful.
And that has been one of my biggest struggles is, who am I?
Feeling that guilt.
It's guilt. And who am I to complain about my boob job? I chose to get a boob job, and now, it was making me so sick, and I took them out, because when I think of breast cancer fighters and survivors, there is some guilt with that. And I still struggle a little bit with that. But when I get messages like that one that
from
I
a breast
received,
cancer survivor,
and one of my closest friends and my co-host, she's a breast cancer survivor, and I even said, I say to her, Joanna, I feel guilty. She's like, no, don't feel guilty.
Right.
You're helping women, because we all have our struggles in one way or another.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's hard.
It is. Now, any final thoughts that you have for our viewers, anyone who's tuning in and listening to this? It's probably mind-blown, as I have been throughout this whole show. And anything you want to share with them?
I've always been adamant and wanting to make sure that my story is my story, and it doesn't mean it's the same for everybody else. I have very good friends and family members who have breast implants, and their health has been great, and they have never had any sort of reaction to it. That was not the case with me. However, if you are suffering some bizarre symptoms and you're going from doctor to doctor to doctor, and you cannot figure out what's wrong with you, I would just explore the option that it could be your breast implants.
Well, thank you, Jen, for being here. I loved having you on. I loved hearing your story. And if you guys are watching, go on Amazon and buy Jen's book, Are Your Fake Boobs Making You Sick? It's going to change your life if this segment hasn't already. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's amazing. Now, be sure to join us next time, because all the time that we have for today on the Health Channel, All Health All the Time on South Florida PBS. And follow us on social media at All Health TV, hashtag All Health TV, where you can get health tips from our experts and see what's coming up on the Health Channel. Be sure to visit our website, allhealthtv.com, where you can watch a live stream of the Health Channel and watch videos from previous episodes. I'm Kathy Buccio. We'll see you next time.